Get started. Thank you for those who made time to jump in real time. Thank you for those who are watching probably on the blog a little later. So we date stamp these NAACLS, Dr. NAACLS, because our compliance requirements can change at least twice a year. So we want to make sure that everybody knows we are recording this on September 29th, 2022. We will be talking about strategies to become compliant in Standard 4. Some of those strategies deal specifically with our current compliance requirements, but if you're watching this, I would say past April, or I would say in May and beyond, just double check with staff to make sure that some of these specific requirements are still the same. You can check the website with the standard compliance guide, or obviously you can call staff, as I mentioned before. Two NAACLS people on the call today. Our volunteer content expert is Dr. MaryEllen Tancred. She's the 2-year educator on RCAP, and before that, I had the pleasure to work with her on PARC. And my name is Mark Spence. I'm the program approval review. I'm not just the program approval coordinator. My apologies. So as I said before, we're talking about Standard 4, and this is one of our most commonly cited standards. That's why we like to touch base on this at least once a year. Standard 4 is also probably one of our more cut and dry standards. We try to be, if you look at the standard compliance guide, there's not a ton of long narratives, except for one section about how to demonstrate compliance with this. So we just want to go over on some helpful tips and strategies about how to be compliant with this standard. And we want to start with making these documents available to our reviewers. Now, as I'm sure you all know, Standard 4A1 has a bullet list of all these things that have to be available to current and prospective students. And MaryEllen will get a little bit into what that means in the next slide. But when you go through this long list of items that may be buried deep in your website or somewhere in your catalog, I would just recommend that you take the extra step to draw your reviewers' attention directly to the materials they need to see. Just remember that they aren't familiar with your documents or your website. They have a significant self-study to go through and review and evaluate, and that they are volunteers. So the more you can do to draw their attention to exactly where they need to be to demonstrate compliance with standard, the better. Some examples of that is if you have a policy that's buried deep in a catalog and you don't want to continue posting your whole catalog, which I wouldn't recommend you do, you can always post a catalog once, just so the whole catalog is there for you to for the reviewer to refer to. And then a little later, when you have to refer to your catalog again, maybe take the page directly where the policy is in a single PDF, maybe highlight that policy, and therefore the reviewer can have that policy exactly at their fingertips. And if they want to double check at random that this policy is actually in the catalog as a whole, they have access to the page number, they have all these details so they can do their due diligence, but also it's an efficient use of their time. I don't want to imply that our reviewers need to be coddled, but it's, again, they have so many documents to review, and it is likely they are reviewing additional documents in addition to yours. An example always comes to the top of my head is when I had a member PARC that was double checking, trying to find a policy on a website. And she called me exasperated and she said, Mark, I've been looking for this for 5 hours and I can't find it. What do I do? And I said, and knowing this person, she was not exaggerating. She was looking for 5 hours. She was one of the most diligent people I've ever met. And I just said, you've done your due diligence, extend the same due diligence you would expect as a program director. And then that's all you can do. So again, really encourage you to draw the reviewer's attention directly to where it needs to go. So audiences, MaryEllen, would you like to talk a little bit what NAACLS means by readily available to prospective students?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. So when we talk about prospective students, we're really prospective students is anything, the public at large. Um, for example, not just students, but the general audience, often in my world, contains parents of the prospective students. So it really helps to have that information. They're really looking to see what you've got on there, what your program is about. They're shopping. They're comparing you to other programs. So prospective students, just think of it as the public at large, and you'll be doing fine. Anything
Yeah,
else?
no, that's perfect. And it's also helpful to always remember when all of these items within the self-study, within the standard, don't always have to be available to both current and prospective students. There's no sections where it's just one or the other. And as MaryEllen said, it's probably easiest just for you to think of prospective students as the public at large, because anybody can be a prospective student. And then the additional benefit of that is that parents and other communities have access to the information to help those students make these decisions. Okay, let's talk specifically about 4A1D. This compliance issues for this has changed a little bit last year and changed a little bit just recently as of last week's board meeting. So let's start with the standard. Students, publications, and disclosures. The following must be defined, published, and readily available to prospective and enrolled students. Results of external Results of external certification outcomes, graduation rates outcomes, placement rates outcomes of the last 3 active years. So as everybody on this call knows, we did a compliance change to this last winter, and we implemented that change at a bit of a quicker pace than NAACLS generally likes to implement these items. And I know I spoke to a lot of program directors that were frustrated with the quickness of how we implemented this. And I understand that. And I think NAACLS was a little frustrated with how quickly we wanted to implement that as well. But that was largely because we had requirements by our recognition agency, which is CHIA, which is an accreditor of accreditor, and we had a pretty quick timeline about how fast we had to get that done. So, and we have another change coming up to this as of last week, but we have an effective due date a bit later. So let's go through this one by one. For standard 4A1D, external rate certification outcomes, graduation rate outcomes, placement rate outcomes have to be available from the last 3 active years. They have to be, and this is for programs with websites, they have to be on program's homepage or one click away from the program's homepage. If it is one click away from the program's homepage, the link has to be clearly identified as program's outcomes. All programs must be presented in a percentage form, and this is the new one as of last week. The last 3 active years must be listed year by year, and this change must be completed by our programs by May 1st, 2023. So we heard your frustrations with how we had to implement the change as fast. The last time it was a priority of us to make sure you had more implementation this time, because we know that with programs with websites, we have these outcomes available. There are many parties that these changes need to go through. So May 1st, 2023 is when we expect those changes to be completed. And then programs can provide additional information on top of the requirements if possible. Like, if you want to say that the reason your certification rates were 75% is because 3 out of 4 students graduated, you can do that. You are not the requirements are the minimum of what you have to have available. I see there's a question in the Q&A. We'll get to Q&A in a bit, kind of at the end of the short session. So NAACLS does not require programs to have websites. They only require that these items be readily available to current and prospective students, and some programs do that through other ways. So you need to describe on the annual survey programs how the public's informed about the 3 required outcomes that we require in Standard 4 to be publicized. You must document how that the program follows the stated policies that you put up, you articulated in your annual survey of programs. Programs must still present all outcomes in percentage form. Programs must still post from the last 3 active years, year by year, and they're still allowed to add additional information as necessary. And I would keep this documentation because you will need to submit it on your self-study, as if you're not posting programs to a website. And also NAACLS checks these annually to make sure programs are doing this. So for standard 4A1D, and that's one of our requirements by CHIA, while most of our standards are checked by our content experts on the self-study and the site visit, 4A1D is checked annually by NAACLS staff. So just to make sure that we are following our requirements by our recognition agency. So some of this that's why you may want to keep this documentation up to date, because you may be contacted by a NAACLS staff person to demonstrate compliance with your articulated policies. So MaryEllen, as a experienced reviewer and a committee member, she has noticed some common errors that she comes across. So I will hand it off to her to kind of go through some of the top mistakes she sees from program directors and ways to avoid them.
Thanks, Mark. So as Mark alluded earlier, broken or outdated links are a frustration. So please make sure that your links work before you submit them. And also, it's very helpful if you're going to provide a link and it's to a document, it's all very helpful to provide the page number with it. So that goes along with the policies that are buried in unfamiliar documents. So if we can provide as much guidance as to where to find things quickly and efficiently, it makes it so much easier to make certain that we check that the program is in compliance. Another thing we see on occasion is that the NAACLS address and or program's accreditation status is not available, or the address might be an older address if it's a program that's been in effect for many years. So it's another small item that's easy to take care of that can help you keep your compliance. And to have policies and procedures for when clinical placement cannot be immediately guaranteed are unavailable. So what happens is there are policies and procedures for this typically, but they're just not shown to us. So these are some of the top ones. So,
Okay.
and they're very easy to solve. Yeah, they're very easy to remedy.
Thank you, MaryEllen. Before we get to the Q&A, a plug for all of our discipline lead persons. So the names you see here, which are also available on the program director section of our website, these are volunteers that are currently committee members and are content experts. They're here for standard interpretation. So if you have a question about, demonstrating compliance with resource assessment, things of that nature, these are the people to contact. They're not specifically, and I've come across this in the past, so I always try to mention it, they're not specifically available to give a once-over to a self-study to make sure programs are on the right track, or give a preliminary review to a progress report. Since they are committee members, that kind of bridges the definition of consultation. They're really here for more specific questions about specific standards. If you have questions about process and policy, those can come to NAACLS staff. If you don't know which, if your question is policy or standard interpretation, please just reach out to NAACLS staff. We are the people involved with NAACLS that are getting paid. The people you see here are generous enough to donate their time. Before we get to Q&A, I'm not going to go through and mention them all, but I do see quite a few volunteers on this call right now. So thank you to those reviewers, committee members who make the organization go. Your time is definitely noticed and it is appreciated. So now we will go to Q&A. You can either drop Q&A in the little Q&A text box. You can raise your hand and we can do it over audio. It is whatever you are more comfortable with. So the first question from Stephanie Damon, is it okay to have more than the last 3 active years? The compliance language is 3 active years, not at least the 3 active years. So I would keep that 3 active years. If you want to put additional context about the success of your program, I would maybe put that somewhere else, you know, in addition to this, or that additional language that we allow you to present. But just be warned that the compliance language and the standard says the last 3 active years. So make sure those least 3 active years are very, very clear to the public and the reviewers. I'm going to take a few of these, MaryEllen, just because they were common questions staff dealt with when we were taking questions over 4A1D earlier.
And they were the same questions I had in the past.
Yeah.
So thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Does the last 3 active years correlate with the dates quested on the annual survey for outcomes? They don't have to. So the annual survey for outcomes, that's standard 2. So while outcomes, while it's easy to cross those wires and blend those, and completely understandable. So standard 2 is those dates where we want the outcomes between, I believe it's July 1st to June 30th of the next year. That's specifically for tracking benchmarks. So we have consistent dates for tracking benchmarks and outcomes of that nature. And especially when we're looking at in standard 2, we give programs an extra year for their students to complete the exam for their internal assessment. Those compliance issues in standard 2 don't directly affect compliance issues in standard 4. So in standard 4, we're looking for the data you have currently available from the active years in order to satisfy those numbers, satisfy that requirement. So the compliance language is just different because they're different standards.
So
to clarify, yeah, sorry, go ahead, MaryEllen.
No, which are you on the one that the posted program outcomes, the last 3 active years can't be provided as an average percent, but rather must be listed as specific percentage according to each year. So we do want them according to each year, each percentage per year. Yes, that is correct. That is the new change. That just happened last week at the board meeting. So if you feel like you may have missed something, you didn't miss something. This is new. This is, and the specific year by year, we are giving you until May 1st, 2023 to make that change. Mm-hmm. And then we have a question of only having 2 years. Would that be a new program? Yeah, that sounds like a new program. We do want you to make, if you only have 2 years, please make that information still available to the public. Ultimately, the goal of this is to make sure the public's well informed. So you would make those 2 years available to the public. This is an excellent question about verbiage about outcomes when no data is available. I think you can just put this program was initially accredited on this date, and at this time there is no data available, and then a data will be made available as soon as it can. And that kind of runs into the next one if they don't have ASCP data. I mean, I think you would just put no. This is a great reason why NAACLS allows you to put a little context. So if you like no students
we still want you to present that in a percentage, but you just put, if you want to put an asterisk somewhere and a little bit below that, no students sat for the exam this year.
So we have this one that the accreditation was just in May of 2022. So therefore, they're not required for initial programs to post those outcomes.
No, I mean, we would have to wait for, depending on what program type it is, we would wait for your students to get graduated. We would wait for your students to graduate, and obviously it would take time for students to get placement and stuff like that. So again, I would just communicate to the reviewers and the public that you are a new program as of this date, and that the data will be made available when it is available.
This information about what an annual survey is and what is required for it. So the information comes to us by email, correct, Mark? And then all the questions to answer are on there, and you're given, gosh, it's about a month time to compile your data and submit it. So it's all submitted online.
That is correct. No, MaryEllen nailed it. The annual survey of programs, usually just, you'll hear often people refer to it as the survey. That is done in the fall of every year. This is required by NAACLS in our standards. It's a way for us to track higher administrative changes as well as benchmark information. If you are a currently accredited program, you should have received that already. Those notices went out. If you're in serious applicant status or you're in the early parts of the process, you would have not received this information yet. So go ahead and email me if you are an accredited program and you did not receive your notification. It may have went to a spam folder, because I do know those notices have went out already.
Okay, and the average vacancy per start date in the annual survey. Question 14, it says, we're talking about, I have to look to see what that is on what section that is on the survey. Do you
have that? I mean, if you're looking specifically for data, I don't have any data currently available to you or for you. If that question means something else, you may have to email me. I don't develop the survey. That is done with a separate person. So if it's specific questions like that, I may need to direct you to someone else.
So a clarification question, the new year-by-year requirement, do we still publish 3-year averages in addition to the rates for each of the 3 years? Now, separately. My understanding was we just do them separately.
Yeah, I believe it's year by year. We will have specific language in the new standard compliance guide that will be out by the end of October with exactly what those requirements are. But it is just the year by year. We just wanted to formalize what all programs are posting. So when prospective students are making their decisions, they're hopefully to remove any kind of communication from what can be a very intimidating process. So, but I don't have, without that specific language developed by the committees and the board in front of me, I'm just going to ask you to wait until those documents are available. In October, we do announce on the NAACLS news when those documents are available, because I don't want to say something somewhat confusing here and then information comes out later and then just provide more communication.
Okay, so the active years then would be after the 1 year the student has to test. For instance, the graduating class of May 2022 would be posted in May 2023.
So this was this is what I was referring to about this year after they passed. That would be more about figuring in assessment and tied to specific graduation dates. That is standard 2. For standard 4, we're looking for the data that we have available of that year. So it would be the people who took that year and passed that year. We're going to give you a little time for this. We don't expect you to update this weekly as these things change. but I just don't want to get the requirements from standard 2 confused with the requirements of standard 4. So for standard 4, for example, you want to see program site right now, you want to see 2020, 21, 22. Yes, those are your last 3 active years.
Great. So
And
the
then
outcomes
Bobby,
on,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, MaryEllen.
So the outcomes on the website are not listed as ongoing 3-year rates, but rather they are that specific year's percentages, and this is what must be in compliance by next May. You were starting to answer that.
I was literally going to start reading that question, so we were on the same page. Yes, you are correct. That is exactly what the requirements are, and that is that's when we expect those items to be in place.
Great.
Any other questions? While I'm waiting for a little bit, let me offer 2 more plugs. We have a couple. I mean, I think I'm biased, but I think all of the Dr. NAACLS are pretty good. But the next Dr. NAACLS will probably be at the end of October. It is about volunteering. So if you have interest in becoming a volunteer, whether that be a reviewer or a committee member, keep an eye on the NAACLS news for that. Over the next month, we will be announcing open positions on the committee and be taking nominations for that. And I highly, highly encourage you to self-nominate. In my experience working with scientists, they do not self-promote enough. So we don't look down on you for self-nominating. If you have an interest in this and you have a passion for it, please let us know. And then also in November, we will be doing a Dr. NAACLS specifically about board of directors policy decisions and standard changes and things of that nature. So while there may be some there will be some announcements regarding those things on the NAACLS news coming out over the next month and a half. I highly encourage you in November to join us at that time for an overview and some Q&A on those items. It's been a really busy summer for our review committee members and our board of directors, and there's a lot of exciting developments coming up, and that's where we're going to cover it.
All right. So if I'm waiting for one student to take the ASCP on October 2022, but all my other 3 students passed, and it's 100%, or do I need to wait to post for that other student?
Yeah, I mean, we can't. I think that's completely acceptable and fair. We can. NAACLS tries really hard not to be overly prescriptive with standards or compliance. This is a great example of when we do get a little more prescriptive, how it can sometimes create more confusion than clarity. But also, since NAACLS programs have a lot of different administrations and a lot of different kinds of delivery methods, I know I've talked to universities and colleges where they do specific polling and surveying of students for if they got employed and things of that nature, specific times a year, and it is out of the program's control when that's available. And I know that's not certification related, but I use that as an example, is that we can't really at this time create hard dates about this is when your outcomes must be updated and this is the regular schedule that they must be updated, because we have so many different variables that present us for doing this. So if you have data for the year, we want it available. If it's incomplete, you can note it's incomplete. Really the goal here is just to provide data for students to have when they make their decision. So we want to make sure there is information available to students, or as MaryEllen put it, parents of students or family of students. It's very interesting she used that example, because that's the example, and that's honestly the compliance standard that SHIA holds us to, is they want to make sure a relative of or a friend of a student that's never been on a university website before has access to university or college's information and are able to understand that information.
So you're saying, Mark, we can go in there and update at any time. Say I have more
Yes.
data in 2022, I just have our IT people just update that on our website. If they didn't all take it at the time I posted, and then a few other late takers of the exam, for example, get results and it's still within that year, we can just update.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. We want to give you the freedom to update as you have that information available, and when it seems like a reasonable time for you to update it. We don't require you to update your information within a certain time frame of your receiving data. Can we wait until 2023 to publish available data for 2022, or do I need to publish whatever I have for 2022, even though 2022 isn't over? Thank you for your guidance. Let me think about that for a second. I got to go through all of the potential outcomes of what I may say. Yeah, I mean, you have a couple of choices. You can, I mean, we're near the end of the year. I think as long as you get that up in early 2023, that will be fine. I don't know how many students are looking to make career decisions right now. I would also advise you another path is that, like, if you have information for 2022 available, you can put that up and just say data incomplete as a notation, as an asterisk or something like that. Again, the compliance language is, prescriptive enough. Without more prescription, I can't really say specifically this is when you have to have it up, or this is when you can't have it up. It just needs to be recent, and it needs to be readily available to those individuals.
Also, Mark,
yeah,
earlier,
go ahead, MaryEllen. Thank you.
Yeah, earlier we said that the data we need right now was for 2021 and 22. So if internally NAACLS is checking and we don't put 22, we'll probably get an email.
Yeah, and yeah, that is true.
So
I
just
don't think we'll be
help
checking the rest of
clarify
the year,
that.
so yeah. So I mean, I think the most up to date you can be on this information, even if it's incomplete, the better. What do you recommend for programs with 2 start dates when it comes to posting outcomes for Standard 4? I don't specifically have any recommendations for that. MaryEllen, do you have anything for that?
Wow. For 2 programs, 2
start dates.
2 start dates.
Like a phlebotomy program.
I mean, for me, if I had 2 start dates, it would be easier for me to keep them separate. It's just what's ever easier, I think, to keep it straight. Because if they have 2 start dates, they have 2 different middle of the program. You know how you're judged from the middle of the program to the end of the program of your graduation rates and things like that. Those middles will be different, right?
Yeah, but that's for Standard 2, for the benchmarks
right.
again. Yeah. So so I don't know how start dates affect this. And Nicole, we've talked before. You can give me a call if we need to talk about this in more detail and I'm not just kind of processing the information correctly.
Yeah, that's
okay.
I'd love to know the answer to that one.
Kara, my university, this is from Kara Calvo, my university has posted career information on my program's homepage that's misleading. Specifically, the information states that our students can go into these careers, medical and clinical technician and technologist. Our program's MLS only. Does NAACLS have a suggestion I can use to get university to remove information from our website? Like, can I use Standard 4? This is a new one. This is interesting. I mean, any standard you can use to try to help you, obviously you can. I don't know if I can think of anything off the top of my head that directly leads to about possible career paths, because that's what this comes down to. Yeah, we don't specifically have any standard off the top of my head that says possible career paths of, like, some standard that says you have to make potential career paths or options available to students. So I can't think of anything. MaryEllen, you know the standard pretty well, and you deal with administrations.
I have this, Kara, I have the same issue. We have that same thing on our website for all our programs that are like that. So we have let it be. I have not tried to make any changes to that at this time, but that's just a new thing they've done within the past year and a half, where it's been a deal to make these career paths and to make it look like that are tied into our campus programs. But I haven't thought it through as to how I could tie that to a standard, like standard 4, but we have the same issue.
Will recording for today's presentation be available for further review? If so, when? Yeah, I generally try to get these videos out within a week. Sometimes they take longer depending on other items that have to go up, but I will try to get this video up on the NAACLS news by the end of this week.
And what about the preference in listing the program outcomes by calendar year or academic year for consistency?
We do not have anything. We do not have a preference for that. These are good questions.
They're great questions. There's another one that has 2 tracks. Should they be getting a second annual survey with the new track?
Yeah, so no, because we still consider both of those to have the same accreditation. We don't accredit tracks per se, we accredit disciplines. So you will receive, as far as I know, and MaryEllen and I were just talking about the survey for the call, and accounting and the survey are the 2 things I actually have the least to do with. So, but everything I understand about the survey is that we only send out 1 per program. If you email me, Nancy, if you email me that specifically, I can forward that to the person who's in charge of the survey.
So the multiple start dates.
Yeah, along the multiple start dates, if your program has flexible completion times and students are continuing in a set cohort, are you just reporting for students who attempted to pass the exam 2022? I would, Marianne, let me read the whole question so everybody can hear it. Along that line of multiple start dates, if your program has flexible completion times and students are not continuing in a set cohort, are you just reporting for students who attempted the exam during 2022 as of 9/29/22 and presented to pass the exam? Yeah, that's what I would do. I mean, these kind of, like, as we're hearing all the variations of delivery methods for programs, it's kind of an example of the challenge of formalizing some of these things too much, because everybody has different processes. So I would go down, I think that would be a really good strategy for that.
Oh, this is a good one. I apologize if this was already addressed. The annual survey asks 2 things I do not recognize from the past surveys: vacancies, unfilled spots for students. Does this mean if we can accept 32 and we only have 27, we would indicate 5?
Yeah, so yeah, this is just, we're gathering information. We want to help support our professional organizations as they kind of try to wrestle with how to address staffing shortages the best we can as an accreditor when our mission is education focused. So we are curious, and that's all this is. This isn't meant to be a quality indicator of any program. We are just curious what vacancies look like. So we're starting to ask those questions.
And
We try
related
not
to
to add,
public,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead,
no,
Jay.
we try not to add a lot to our surveys because we know they're long enough already, and we know you are all very, very busy, but we're hoping to find useful data that will benefit us all.
So question is about number 37. So attach the documents or other evidence used to make the outcomes available to the public. Are you asking us to include actual BOC score pages and sample surveys to show you how we solicit data for the BOC pass rate? A list of admitted and graduated students for grad attrition and job placement?
So this is about the survey. I believe that question is directly related to programs that do not have websites, and we want to know how they are making their outcomes readily available. So this is something we kind of mentioned on a slide previously. If you don't have a website, how are you making sure this information is available to current and prospective students? And as my former CEO always said, if it's not documented, it's not done. So it's just a way for us to make sure that the standards being complied to. And obviously, if you don't have a website, there are different ways we need to access that information. But if you do have a website, I do not believe you have to add all that additional information. That is more of something that would have to be added on the self-study. And even then, I don't think we're looking for that much information if you have a website where you post your outcomes. Will vacancy information be published available once the survey is collected? I'd love to know. I don't know what's going to happen to that vacancy data. This is a new question. I'm not sure what I'm not sure the availability to the public at large would be. But at least I think our CEO is on this call, at least she was at the beginning. So if not, I'll make sure to pass that along to her. 1 second while I cycle through these. Why I should have been marking all these as answered. Okay, that's the last question. Good questions, everyone. So I'll give it a couple more. What time is it? Yeah, we have about 15 more minutes, but these don't always last the whole hour. I'll give it a couple more minutes, but obviously, as I mentioned before, but worth mentioning again, you can always email us if something occurs to you after this. I know you all want to be in compliance and not get the not get negative reviews for this, so we're happy to help. Okay, well, it doesn't seem to be, unless, well, no, my cursor's moving. So so it looks like we will begin to wrap up the call, but before we do, we are having a workshop coming up in November that I still believe you are available for early bird registration for. So if you're, I mean, obviously compliance is a big issue, process is a big issue. You need to present 36 hours of professional development. The workshop is a good pathway for that. It is a hybrid workshop, but come to Chicago. Chicago's gorgeous in the fall. So come hang out with us in Rosemont. And it'll be a great workshop. So that information is available on the website as well. So just right on the front page. So thank you, Marissa, for reminding me. With that, I will end this call. Thanks for everybody jumping on, and have a great weekend.